Their grief is indescribable.
I haven't seen no change or anything like that. I'm a black man, and I'm scared to walk down the street.
Just a few words, but they say it all.
I'm tired of hearing the same stories over and over about just senseless killings by police.
I can't breathe. Please, the name of I can't breathe shit.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been waiting the whole time, man.
It has been 1 year since America's cities were on fire. There was a lot of grief and anger, peaceful protests and riots, demonstrations and looting. Black Lives Matter became a rallying cry for a generation. From Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., Houston to Minneapolis, the city where it all began, the place where George Floyd died. And the protests here have not stopped. People are still marching with the same battle cry, demanding justice. Over the past few months, we've traveled to Minneapolis multiple times, and what we've heard was always the same.
There hasn't been any change because we're getting the same results. We're getting the same results with black men being killed by the police and being defended later on.
Nothing has changed. That seems to be the prevailing opinion, at least here at numerous protests from the Black Lives Matter community in Minneapolis. But things are more complicated than they seem. Minneapolis is a city of 420,000 people. From far away from Interstate 94, you can already see the shiny high-rise buildings, but outside of the city, there's not much left of the apparent shine. We're here now on Broadway, the street that divides the city into the south and the north. The northern part is what you would call a no-go zone for the police. Extremely high crime rates, a lot of drug trafficking, and over here, that's a so-called murder station, the gas station of death, if you will. There have been 22 shootings here alone in the past few weeks.
Pop, 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 pop. 10, 15, 20, 30. Every night. And we're in the middle of a war zone here.
We meet up with Don Samuels, 64 years old, a social worker who lives and works here. It's not white against black, the police against African American, he says, but everyone against everyone. Drug dealers, arms dealers, gangs.
But then you have the 540 or so people who actually got a bullet in their bodies.
500.
Yeah, over 500 in 2020.
Yeah.
And then you have the 84 that actually got killed.
Mm-hmm. Are we talking about this area, this neighborhood?
In the city, yeah. With most of them happening on the north side here.
Yeah.
Hey, what the fuck? Don't put me on camera, bro. Man, the fuck y'all? Fuck this homeowners here. Hey, don't wait. I do too. You want the fuck y'all on, bro? Yeah, I live here as well. Stop it. Don't do that shit, Joe. We're not animals. Don't film us. We're trying to knock your ass out, bro.
Reporters are not welcome here. And the same goes for the police. But they avoid the area anyway. And the few police officers who show up often see themselves more as a kind of onlookers. When the patrol car comes around the corner, drug dealers who go about their business here don't let themselves being bothered at all. They know the police officers won't do anything anyway.
I don't make the job hard. You know, I just want the community to be safe and you know, and go about their business as you see out here. You know, they're just going about their business. They're just doing what they need to do to, you know. Any area is crime. I mean, there's crime. I mean, you can go to any neighborhood. You know, you can go into the suburbs, and there's crime in the suburbs. I mean, there's crime wherever you are. I mean, there's no city is crimeless. No city has no crime in their neighborhood. So, like I said, it's all about how you portray things and, you know, and how you look at things.
The fact that people are getting injured or robbed here, or even murdered in this area where almost solely African Americans live, seems to be accepted by the city with a shrug of the shoulders. Black Lives Matter? For some here, just an empty phrase.
Part of the problem is that this is America. This is seen as America. It's kind of like if everybody in your family got diabetes and you just say, well, our family is like that. And nobody thinks, well, should we change the diet? Well, our family is just like that. Well, that's how the American family sees inner city communities. It's not something to fix. It's just our family, our country is just like that.
Since George Floyd's death, the city's crime rate has increased by 21%. 5,500 violent crimes in a single year. The number of murders doubled, from round about 40 to more than 80. The increase has a lot to do with the pandemic, social and economic problems, with unemployment. But the events on and after May 25th have also set something in motion that the city is still struggling with. Police officers have quit their jobs in droves.
The department has probably started the year at about 840 officers around there. Some officers left, on medical claims for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Actually trapped in the 3rd precinct, not knowing if they're going to survive. So between the trauma and the council announcing they're going to abolish the department, people started to leave. They said, we have no support here. They may have an opportunity to go to a different department. So I mentioned they're at 840. I've heard they're at 638 now.
The man we meet at the police department's 5th precinct, who knows the numbers by trade, is Greg Hestes, the former deputy police chief of Minneapolis. The building is secured by additional fences and concrete barriers. Those who are supposed to keep everyone safe actually fear for their own safety.
Right now, I say that they are demoralized and depleted. They do not, they don't have resources, and they don't perceive any support from the elected officials. So, fortunately, most of them are still committed to their profession. The other consequence is you'll hear citizens now complaining about how long it takes to get police to respond to a 911 call. And that's true, but it angers people. They pay taxes and they have to wait for hours for the police to respond. So a lot of consequences.
Minneapolis has changed since the death of George Floyd, but not like many had hoped. The place where the 46-year-old got killed by former police officer Derek Chauvin is an autonomous zone. Activists have set up roadblocks and live by their own rules. Only when the city has met their 24 demands, they tell us, are they willing to end their occupation. They want, among other things, investments in their community, tax breaks for residents, and the dismissal of the district attorney and several investigators.
We've had a lot of meetings and discussions about him, and sometimes it feels like they want to work with us, and sometimes it feels like it's all just words, to be honest. They're not doing stuff about him, so we're working on him ourselves. In a lot of ways, they treat us like we're being unreasonable, asking too much of them. They think we're just asking for the world and dreaming of a utopia, but you have to be idealistic to make change. And so it's not like we're not crazy. We're working on these things at the same time. We're not saying, give us this, we won't do anything. We're working on them.
The mayor wants to end the occupation as soon as possible and have the memorial removed. The activists promise to resist. Minneapolis is headed straight for a new confrontation between protesters and police. Confrontations, street battles, looting. 1 year ago, a lot of that happened in the nation's capital too. The streets around the White House became a battle zone, night after night. Things were demolished, destroyed, set on fire. Young African Americans in particular gave free rein to their anger and frustration. Protests turned into riots. Weeks later, the street exactly here was named Black Lives Matter Plaza. The new giant yellow letters on the concrete unmistakable. At the beginning of May, the street, the plaza, is a construction site. The words Black Lives and Matter almost not visible. Only the street signs remind you of what this block was for months. A place where people got together, where they demonstrated, where they celebrated. The White House, Lafayette Park in front of it, the well-known Pennsylvania Avenue, restricted area. You got to go outside of the government district, outside of downtown DC, and into the eastern part of the city to get answers. Answers to the question, what has changed for the Black community? What we hear is sobering.
Has there been any change that you see in the neighborhood in your life?
No. There's still shooting, a lot of shooting still going on. Stealing cars, you know, that's up now, carjacking, that's up, you know, more than I ever seen. Yeah. I think it's just need more police presence in the police presence, that don't do no good.
Not just that, we need more rec centers for the youth. We need activities for these youngins out here so they can stop, put the guns down, do something for the youngins, more recreation centers, more.
That's what I think it is.
More, and they need more firearms.
Especially when it comes to the juveniles. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of carjackings going on. And the thing is that the young children here in the DC area need things to do. They need to have activities to do. We know that COVID is here, the pandemic has hit. Right. But I really believe that it can get better.
But at the moment, it's getting worse. The number of murders this year is already at 65, compared to 40 in all of 2020. There were more than 500 robberies. The number of violent crimes has already exceeded the previous year's level. And African American juveniles are involved in a rapidly increasing number as a perpetrator and as a victim. Despite many promises, the city hardly offers any way out, and so others try to step in. Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Cameras is the name of this project. With that, the comedian Red Grant, among others, tries to get young people off the streets. These kids learn to shoot with cameras, not with weapons.
Y'all gotta share this information. It's very easy for them to get involved with gangs because it's around them. That's why we want to give them another outlook and another place to go, because you know, if we don't go and grab our kids, then somebody else is going to grab them. And we're trying to stop violence around our whole city. We want everybody to put the guns down. We want violence to stop, and definitely, you know, we push our kids not to have and be involved with any violence.
These kids are between 12 and 17 years old, and they're all African Americans. They know poverty, they know crime in their streets, brutality on their doorsteps. When we talk to 16-year-old Muhammad and ask him about his thoughts on the subject of racism, he suddenly is dead serious, focused. His words are impressive and frightening at the same time, because they reflect his reality head-on.
There's still inequality in this world. No matter where we are, we're judged by our skin. No matter who you are, you're judged by how you look. It doesn't matter if I'm white or black, you're always judged by how you look. Some people say that white people do better work than black people, which I disagree with. I feel like everyone shouldn't be judged by their skin color because we're all the same on the inside. And I feel like this inequality in this world really holds back kids from trying to aspire to do what they want to be. And it really puts kids in a dark hole because they feel like they grew up with teachers that say, oh, you're never gonna be nothing because whatever, or you're never gonna be nothing because you live here. You're never gonna be nothing because you look like this. And I feel like it's not the same for white people. White people get to live freely and truly live out their dreams. But us black people, we really have to struggle and work hard for our dreams. It's 10 times harder as a black man in this world than a white man.
The film project could be the chance to escape from this world, their world. It is a long road, and only a few are fortunate enough to get the support. Two days after we've met this group of young people, just a few miles away in southeast DC, 2 young African Americans were shot dead by a police officer in plain clothes. The organization Black Lives Matter invites us to a vigil. Dominique Williams and James Johnson died because the police officer thought they were car thieves and fired his weapon. They were deadly shots. Neighbors, friends, residents came to the public funeral service, and the questions we keep hearing are, why us? Why our family? Why we African Americans?
That's my birthday twin. So we have the same birthday coming up on May 20th. So it's kind of hard for me, like, you know, I'm about to be 33, and it's hard, like, I went 32 years birthdays with him, and now I got to spend the rest of my days sharing a birthday without him. So it's kind of hard, like, you know, the family, we really hurting. But right now, it's no change. I don't see no change, you know what I'm saying? And I'm a person, I don't like the word hate. I don't like the word hate. But like right now, I don't trust cops because they're supposed to be here to protect us. And we can't trust them. Who can we trust? And then, you know, we have our black brothers killing each other. You know what I'm saying? So it's no change. And everybody gonna have to come together as once. Blacks, white, whatever race you are, we gotta come as once. And if we don't do that, it's never gonna change.
Washington, D.C., like 40 other cities in the U.S., had already passed new guidelines for police practices last year. Here, the use of tear gas, pepper spray, and rubber bullets against demonstrators is now being banned. But the city's African-American community, who makes up almost half of the city's population, continues to complain about excessive police use of force.
Systemic oppression. I mean, we can't even just be, basically. We can't walk down the streets without being suspected of doing something wrong. Am I disappointed? To a certain extent, because, I mean, I know it can't just happen overnight just like that. Certain things have to take place. And sometimes I understand that it may take a little time, but stuff like this is taking too much time.
I can't breathe. Please, the name of it. I can't breathe shit.
Get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get
Mama.
in the car right.
I can't.
1 year has passed since George Floyd's death on May 25, 2020. His murderer, former police officer Derek Chauvin, was on trial and found guilty. 2nd-degree murder, 3rd-degree murder, manslaughter. His sentence has not been announced yet. But people are still dying at the hands of law enforcement in the US. And in the past 12 months, 181 of them were black, a disproportionate number. The use of deadly force, in a lot of cases at least questionable. Police and body camera videos are now often released within 24 hours, for all Americans to see and for them to form their own opinions. In the summer of 2020 in Richmond, Virginia, the fight was more about the past than the future, about America's history and how to deal with it. Some demonstrators took it upon themselves to answer that question in their own way and forcibly tore down Confederate memorials, statues of commanders of the Confederate Army during the Civil War. And Christopher Columbus, too, probably disappeared forever. The city had 8 more bronze figures removed, such as the one of Commander Jeb Stuart. The monuments, for many a relic of oppression, of slavery. Today, there is only one monument left on Monument Avenue in Richmond, that of American Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The city had a fence built around the 60-foot-tall monument out of fear of vandalism.
So the most disappointing thing was the fence. That fence right there. That was the most disappointing thing. After it had all of the graffiti and all of that kind of stuff going on, it transformed into a space where people could come gather. And it kind of even would change your mood if you came into that space, right? So closing it off was just, it's a disgrace. And it also just amplifies the fact that they don't really care about our plight.
Activists have had their tent out of protest here for about a year now. It's kind of a permanent vigil. Don't forget and don't be forgotten. Most residents have gotten used to their presence by now, although the Black Lives Matter movement actually does not want that, being used to it, normalcy.
Obviously, we're in people's front yards, you see? And we're making noise. And they come out every now and again and they say, you guys need to turn it down. They call the police on us. The police stopped coming out talking to us because they call so often. Definitely people are more aware of the Black plight. I don't think that they understand the specifics of it. I don't think that they're informed about how systemic oppression works.
This is the world as many African Americans see it, but there's also a different way of looking at things. We go west. Powhatan is the name of the place we are driving to. There we meet Patrick McSweeney. He's a lawyer, the former chair of the Republican Party of Virginia, and a man of fairly strong views.
The fundamental principle of Black Lives Matter is to intimidate and to achieve their ends by intimidation and mob rule. That fundamental flaw in their very strategy is what bothers me and bothers a lot of people. I think that's contributed to the change in public opinion. People are tired of it, particularly the people on Monument Avenue who've had to suffer from months of control, much like Seattle and Portland. They simply took control. They closed off streets, they intimidated, they couldn't even invite their grandchildren to their houses. Couldn't go out without worry about physical confrontation.
That's no longer the case today, but the appearance of this historic street is different. The pedestals of the Confederate monuments are still standing, but the statues have disappeared. And the houses along the avenue have massively lost in value. Black Lives Matter, conservatives like Patrick McSweeney say, is not a blessing, but a curse.
You can't say all lives matter. You could say only Black Lives Matter. What does that say to the Asians and the Hispanics and the South Asians? Don't they matter too? This kind of grievance advancement is paralyzing. This region is more divided now than it's ever been. It's more divided because of this focus on identity politics and grievances. It's paralyzing this region. It's hurting us, both economically and culturally.
The dispute over the Robert E. Lee monument continues in court. Patrick McSweeney wants to force the city to preserve the monument and to put the other demolished ones back up again. Again, there will be winners and losers. The African American community in Minneapolis sees itself as a winner, at least for the time being. For months, they had demonstrated for more rights and, above all, justice, and all of America had listened to them. By now, there has been some disappointment at that place where George Floyd died a year ago, even for many activists. In their eyes, justice was served with a guilty verdict against Derek Chauvin. But it did not open a completely new chapter in the coexistence of black and white people.
I was in line, and a white lady came up. The dude was helping me, and the white lady came up. He just paid me no attention and went on and served her. And then another lady had to come serve me while he was right there serving me. But when the white lady, he just quit even talking to me. And that's what I'm saying. That's what goes on in America.
At least on 38th Street and Chicago Avenue, however, it's a different America. One where black people and white people come together, where mothers bring their children. It's a place where history was made, or at least the first chapter of a yet unfinished story.
It still needs to be police reform, it still needs to be equality, and we still need to be treated as equal. So that's where all of the work needs to continue to happen. So yes, there's still a ton of work. The reform bill needs to happen, so there won't be any more lives lost to senseless acts of violence by the police officers.
I think it's a long way to go, because it was a long way to get here. I feel that it's gonna take day-by-day efforts. You know, it's gonna take for people to really dig deep within themselves and see how they can impose for a change that's for the betterment of everybody, no matter what race, no matter what class.
And that's why protests continue, like recently here in Washington, D.C. Relatives of victims of police violence. Everyone has their own story, their own pain. They are united by their grief and call for justice. They want change. Changes that they also demand from politicians, knowing that the politicians alone will not be able to fix it.